I am going to let everybody in. I'm just going to leave up this intro slide for everybody to
Mhm.
see. Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Oh, thank you all for joining. This is great. I wasn't sure how many attendees we would get because I know the wind and everything. We were worried that there'd be a lot of people without power, but um, it seems as though we have quite a few attendees, which is great. All right.
John Piper just joined in.
Hi, John. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right. So I am going to get started. In a minute, I'll take down this screen so you can see everybody's faces easily. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of the topics that we'll be discussing today. So we're going to be talking about cultural, historic, natural, and open space resources. And we have it scheduled to go from 2:30 to 4, but it may not last that long. It certainly, we will not go over that. If we get close to 4, I'll make sure that we're wrapping up the conversation by that point. But that is the slated time, with the assumption that we'd probably spend about half the time on each topic. But there are some overlapping questions as well. And I actually, although the title says cultural and historic first, I'm actually probably going to start with natural resources and open space questions because we have some other consultants on the call who are working on the open space and recreation plan update. And so while they are, of course, welcome to stay for the cultural and historic resources questions, they also, if they want to pop off after the questions relating to open space, they are, oh, sorry, they are welcome to do so. So we're going to be doing just general introductions. I have some general questions kind of that really apply to everybody on this call and actually kind of bridge the gap between the two topics. And then I will turn it over to Ken for some natural resources and open space questions, as well as our friends from Wildscape Design. Looks like Kara's on the call with us. And if you have any questions, Kara, or you can just listen, whatever works for you. And then we'll turn it over to Shannon from PVPC for questions related to cultural and historic resources. So that is the plan. And with that, I'm going to actually stop the screen share. So there is a chat feature. I'll do my best to kind of keep track of it, especially as Ken and Shannon kind of take over with questions. But there is a chat on the bottom if you're not familiar with Zoom, where you can post any questions there. And Joanne had asked, or actually made a statement about Josh being in another meeting that has not ended. I don't know if Josh is going to be here on this meeting. He said he was very, very busy this week. He's going to do his best, but we will proceed. And I did let everybody know that the meetings are recorded, so he can certainly watch after, and we're going to take detailed notes as well. So, okay, so we have quite a few people here. This is great. And my first question is I just want you to introduce yourselves, and I'll kind of go around in the order that I see you on my grid. And if you are a consultant from either PVPC or Wildscape Designs, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself. And then if you are a member of the community who has joined us, I'm just going to ask you what your role is in the community, especially as it relates to cultural, historic, open space, or natural resources. Oh, we have more people in the waiting room. That is great. This is awesome. Okay. So Shannon, you are the first one in my grid. So I will start with our friends from PVPC.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Shannon Walsh. I'm the Historic Preservation Planner for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Thank you. And Ken?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Comia. I am a Senior Land Use Planner with the Land Use and Environment section at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, also serving as co-project manager for the master plan.
Thank you. And it looks like we have both of our friends from Wildscape Designs. Kara, do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Kara Montague, working on developing the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which is different from the Resilient Master Plan, but there is a ton of overlap. So it's great to be at this meeting.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining. Rowan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rowan, also with Wildscape Design, and along with Kara, we're working on the OSRP update. And there's just substantial overlap with what this focus group will be working on. So we're excited to be here and mostly just tuning in, listening, gathering some information, participating where appropriate, and hopefully we'll be able to revisit and dig into some of these similar topics a little bit more detail in our visioning session, which is yet to be scheduled for the OSRP, but I'm sure y'all will hear about it. Thanks.
Yes, and Rowan will connect about that. So thank you. And Ken, did you want to introduce?
Sure. Yeah, so we also have on this call today, and she will be present at all of our focus groups as we're in Blanford this week, Dunya Nouf, who is our fellow from Morocco as part of the Department of State's International Fellow Program. And so she is a planner from Agadir, Morocco, working in the state government there. And she has been providing a lot of insight into planning and been helpful with the exchange. So please make her feel welcome, but she will be here all week.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my first general question is directed at everybody, and I'll just go around. So again, with your role in the community, I will start with Mr. Norcross.
Hello, I'm Chips Norcross, and I am the president of the Historical Society.
Great. Thank you. And Mr. Stevens?
I am the chair of the Blanford Cultural Council and one of 3 elected trustees for the library.
Thank you. And can you just tell me how to pronounce your first name?
Byam.
Byam. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. Great, thanks. And Ms. Joanne Martin?
Hi, I'm Joanne Martin. I am admin support for basically the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen, but for most of the departments I help out. And I'm just here to learn. I'm kind of a newbie in town. I've only been around about 8 years.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Kidd? Oh, I'm sorry, I think you're muted. Can you try again?
Yeah, Robert Kidd, I go by Bob. I've been in town about 40 years. I sit on the board of the Historic Society with Chips. I need to send out a warning that because of the high winds, my computer has been fading in and out all day. So if you lose me, I'll try to get back on. My recent contributions probably include that I'm an author of 2 or 3 local history type books in the area.
Oh, wow, okay. Thank you.
Not, oh,
And
wow, just they're there.
all right. And then Miss Davio. Am I saying your last name right, Nicole?
That was pretty good. Davio.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm Nicole, and I'm the director of the Porter Memorial Library in Blanford, and then I'm also a member of the local cultural council, of which Byam is the chair.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And we have someone on a call, a number that starts with 413. Do you want to say hello? Okay. All right.
That might be me,
Oh, yes.
John
And,
Piper.
yes. Hi, John. And you did say hello. So thank you.
Everybody's 413, so you got to say
Oh.
the next brief.
Gotcha. And John, can you tell us about your role in town? I know I've met you on a couple of meetings so far, but just for the benefit of, I'm sure everyone knows each other.
Been here about 34, 35 years, something like that. I'm on Conservation Commission. I'm an officer with the Blanford Fire Department.
Okay.
I'm a town resident.
Excellent. Okay. And then Linda Barnard. Linda? Oh, your screen looks frozen. Let's see. I'll come back to Linda. Oh, there you are. Hi, Linda. Okay. Looks frozen again. Okay.
I will share that Linda's on the Blanford Historical Commission.
Okay, thank you. I hope she can hear us. But Linda, if you're having trouble, if I don't know if the chat will work, but if you want to leave a message in the chat, certainly feel free as well if you can't hear us or anything. And Mary? Hi, Mary.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. I am a director of the Blanford Historical Society. I serve on the Cultural Council, and along with BIAM, I'm also a library trustee.
Excellent. And then lastly, I see someone with just the number 2. I don't know if you want to say hello, introduce yourself. Okay. All right. So sorry.
I don't know if I don't know if you call my name, but my name's Linda.
Yes.
And
Hi, Linda.
but my internet is going in and out, so I don't know how long I'm going to be here.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I understand. And I will send out the questions again in case anyone wants to give a written response if they do get cut off. But thank you for being here. So my first question, and I'll just let people answer. We don't have to go around this time. If you have an answer, feel free to jump in, raise your hand. But if someone were visiting Blanford, where would you take them and why? Where would you have to take them?
Depends on why they're coming.
So that's a good, yeah.
I mean, we have people coming through that are genealogically fascinated, and that I take probably 3 or 4 groups a month that are looking for specific information. The ancient cemetery and the church and the historical society, and as well as the library. The library is a wonderful resource as well, and there were always many places to go to look at and whatever. If you want to go hiking, we've got a wonderful hiking trails. The Herrick Road hiking trails are right around the corner that are particularly wonderful for people that are out of town that want to see what we have in the way of close by trails.
Great, thank you. So kind of along those lines, like if you wanted to just take someone around town to the places that you feel tell the story of Blanford, anyone else have thoughts of where you just would have to show your visitor?
I generally do a driving loop with people I want to show the town, and I drive up to show them the White Church.
Okay.
And point out the fairgrounds and talk about like the good old days.
Fairgrounds,
Then
okay.
I go around down Gore Road and show them why they don't want to live on Gore Road because it's treacherous. And then when I come back, I go through the through North Blanford Road, past the cemetery, and outside the cemetery, and then go hiking.
Okay.
Over on, I think it's the Herrick Road hiking. Isn't that right, Lenny? Chips? So we go down out there, and there's hiking areas, and then the center of town has like the library and the general store.
Okay. So one thing I'm
So
finding,
similar to chips, it's like a little loop that you can make that kind of hits the highlights of Blanford. But the white church is one that I would definitely put on there.
okay,
I think it's a really beautiful focal point.
okay. Excellent. So I don't know if this was just an issue on my end, that the audio was chopping out a bit. Was that just an Alexis issue, or were other people having that as well?
That
Okay.
was back. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I did get quite a few things from that. But I also put a question in the chat, just reiterating that question of where would you take someone visiting Blanford if you would rather answer there if you're worried about your connection. So Nicole, I believe what I got there, you mentioned that you have a driving loop, that you would take people around visiting the White Church, the fairgrounds, a particular road that I didn't catch the name of it, but also you mentioned a cemetery, taking people hiking, and the center of town where the library is, and just the general sense that you have this kind of mapped driving route that would showcase all of these things. If
If people are interested in Native American stone landscapes, we've got newly found areas in town that are particularly interesting in that area up on Birch Hill. And
okay. All right.
and then there's the
Also the views.
The views.
Yep, wonderful views out there. Yep. And then there's the Gibbs Road with where we had our silent movie studios way back in the early part of the 20th century. It's a fascinating road to go down.
Okay.
Stories about that.
Excellent. Thank you. So my last kind of general question before I'll turn it over to Ken for some questions he might have specific to natural resources, open space, recreation is, if you were to look into a crystal ball and see Blanford's future in 10 years or 50 or 100, what would you absolutely want to see the same? What would you hate to see gone or changed?
The White Church. We're getting ready for its 200th anniversary coming up in 2022, which is going to be a town-wide celebration, which people will be hearing a lot more of in the near future.
Okay. Great. Anybody else before I turn it over to Ken? Okay.
For
The open spaces.
Open spaces, and then Byam, did you say 4A?
I was going to say, for a small town, we have a library and a library staff that is quite unusual. And we're in the midst of a multi-year expansion and modernization, upgrading of the library. And we're just starting to fundraise for an expansion of that building. So 100 years from now, I would like people to come and visit what doesn't partially exist, but doesn't fully exist yet, which will be our, new exciting library.
That's great.
And a similar kind of comment goes for the Historical Society, where we're dreaming of an addition for that. We're running out of space, and that's another area that hopefully will be worked on in the next number of years.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I think for all of us, probably, the most remarkable thing about this town is the amount of open space and undeveloped land that's here.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I probably would, certainly speaking for myself, would not want to have changed is the fact that it is very rural. Mm-hmm. And that there is hiking and kayaking and snowshoeing and outdoor activity year-round. That is very much a part of what we do in town.
Okay. All right. Thank
Cross-country skiing, whatever. I mean, just outdoor life.
Come see our sugar house when we're actually boiling sap, which happened last weekend for the first time this year.
Okay, great, thank you. So Ken, I have, I know we had talked about questions relating to open space and natural resources. I'll let you start, and then if I have any other follow-up questions, I might chime in after. And obviously, same goes for Rowan and Kara. If there's anything that you want to learn that you haven't learned yet, feel free to jump in at any time.
Sure. Thanks, Alexis. And thanks everyone for coming out today. As Alexis mentioned, and as both Rowan and Kara are on this call, the town is also undergoing an open space and recreation plan process, and that is kind of happening parallel. But within the master plan that Chips, Bob, Linda, and some other folks on the call are on that resilient master plan committee, there's an opportunity to, that as Rowan mentioned earlier, that there's going to be some overlap in some of the items that we're discussing throughout this process. But I think one of the big things, and I'll invite Rowan and Kara to also ask a question or two. But I think one of the big things that I've gathered based on the discussions with the town administrator, the discussions with the Conservation Commission, the discussions in that first meeting of the committee that's updating the open space plan is the land with regards to that's owned by Springfield Water. And understanding that there's conservation restrictions a lot on that land. And my numbers show, or the GIS mapping shows that about 9,000 acres are owned by Springfield Water Department. And I know in talking to the Conservation Commission chair, there was this discussion about access to the public. And so one of the big questions that I think understanding that, and as we do a legal review of these conservation restrictions and understand them a little better, are there other criteria with regards to public access that we should be looking as part of the agreement? And a follow-up to that is, are there any other aspects of how Blanford approaches public space that should be part of the analysis or possible discussion with this large landowner? Both, as we know, is Springfield Water and Hull in town. So I guess, if there's some initial conversation from this first question that can happen, I invite you to, respond to that with regards to the large landowner and some of the impacts to the accessibility of those open spaces to the town.
In terms of accessibility, 9/11 really changed the town's access to land owned by Springfield Water District. They closed a through road over the dam, and they erected along the perimeters of their properties all these gates and cameras that are patrolled 20 years later, still every day by the police. And it's made it a lot less pleasant to access those lands. And given what they pay for the use of that land, I don't think the quid pro quo is balanced the way it should be. In terms of the 9,000 acres of land that they've taken off the tax roll, and instead of paying taxes, there's a payment that was, as I understand it, negotiated in the 40s, that in lieu of taxes, an annual payment.
So since 9/11, when the security measures were put in place, the access that maybe the town had to those spaces has been, now there's either very limited access or no access at all, or it's, it doesn't feel, based on Byam's point with regards to gates and cameras, it doesn't feel as welcoming as it was.
That's the way I see it.
Okay. Thank you.
having been someone who was,
They were unfriendly
More or less.
before, they're now much worse.
yep. I think everybody agrees.
Yes, that's very true. Very true.
So was there, I guess, prior to 9/11 and those particular lands, was there, and in conversations with the chair of the Conservation Commission and your town administrator, it sounds as if using those spaces for what they were before, maybe walking trails or some sort of passive recreation along those, was there anything that you were able to experience prior to 9/11 that you had full access to those lands that, maybe we're not capturing, at least in our understanding of, the capacity and the capability of those.
Well,
Of those.
before that,
There
before
was
that
never
time,
full access to those lands.
Okay,
but before that time, you couldn't fish in the reservoir, but you could at least fish in the tributaries. Now you can't even fish in the tributaries that go into the reservoir.
okay.
And you
John-
cannot go down over the dam. I can't get to visit family as easily as I could before by driving over the dam.
Correct.
And that's not.
So
useful.
John, we're here. To my knowledge, the road going through Cobble was just a throughway. Technically, you're not supposed to stop. I believe that all of that land was posted as off limits. I never heard of any fishing in the tributaries unless they were not on Springfield Waterworks. There's a state law that says if they received any money from the state to purchase land for water rights, they had to open it up to non-motorized public access. When Dick looked into that, whoever the lady is that represents Springfield Waterworks, at first she said no, there's no access to any of that land. Dick reminded her of the state law. She said she would look into it. That was months ago, and nothing, to my knowledge, has happened since.
And it's my understanding that when 9/11 happened, that the ruling was the emergency legislation said no vehicular traffic, didn't say anything about on foot, and everything is stopped at this point for sure, having been almost arrested myself.
Chips, if they catch you in there, you can be arrested. The two bicyclists got arrested at the end of Herrick Road.
No question.
Dick,
I was arrested at the end of Herrick Road.
So Dick was there when the cop found the two cyclists coming out from behind the gate. And as he was arresting them, Dick said, "This is Blanford Town Conservation property, and they have the right to be in there." At which point the state, he said, "If you don't leave, I'm going to arrest you for getting involved, interrupting an arrest."
That's
the
exactly.
cops didn't want to hear it. Since then, they have taken, Dick tried to explain that the gate was there because that's where they put it, but it's technically not on Springfield Waterworks property. They did have signs on the gate that said no trespassing, which is, the state, he pointed that out to Dick. I don't know if Dick actually went to the lady that I'd mentioned earlier. I don't know her name. Since then, the signs have been taken down. For example, the gate there at Shepherd Farm also had the no trespassing sign. That is simply a right of way. And when you follow that road in, it's, I don't know, 100 yards above the stream. that's behind Shepherd Farm, and the signs of no trespassing were all on the stream side of that access road, which is simply an access. I haven't been back there to see if they took those signs down, but Shepherd Farm owns 100 feet, 100 yards on the other side of that stream. And Springfield Waterworks was just, because nobody did anything or nobody said anything, they were just shutting all that land down. They don't even own that land, and they had signs up to say no trespassing.
Thank you, John. That's very helpful. And I'm sure that, in our work with the OSRP process, as well as ongoing conversations that, we're having, that I have with Josh, I know Shannon's doing work in Blandford too, with regard to some properties that probably are connected in some way to some of those lands. There's going to be a lot more conversation about this, but and it's very clear that a treatment of this idea and this concept does belong in the master plan, understanding the role of Springfield Water and some of the hardships that you've had over the years. But maybe let's turn to something positive with regards to your open spaces, right? So one question is, what is Blandford doing well right now in terms of its recreational, open space, and natural resources?
Just this past year, I don't know who, Recreation Committee maybe, I don't know, somebody on this call knows. There was a wonderful brochure put together with the hiking trails in the town of Blanford. And a lot of people started working their way through that list. And it has state forest land, it has conservation land. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource that is getting people, particularly during the pandemic, out of their houses and out walking around in nature and rediscovering their relationship to nature. And I think that brochure has been an unqualified success.
Good to hear. It's part of the committee.
Can you say, other than Niddles Farm, where the other trails were?
Herrick?
A lot of them are up in the Blanford, Chester Blanford State Forest, for instance.
Yep, down
There's
Sanderson
some walks,
Brook.
there are walks even in the center of town.
Yep.
Where would that be in the center of town?
Kalen Road and up around the church. The whole emphasis was trying to get senior citizens out and having a number of walks that were appropriate for people that were not able to do a great deal of heavy duty exercise. And so that just a loop around in front of the store around Kalen Road or whatever was one walk, going up from the Historical Society up to the Hill Cemetery and around the church. And then of course, both of the Herrick Road loops, and then the loop that goes down Cobble Mountain Road down to where the gate is. And there's a loop that goes up around the Eden Road, Cobble Mountain. And then the loop that's down with all that you were talking about as far as the Sanderson Brook Falls and Beulah Road.
A good portion of that is not in Blandford. There are small sections that are actually
all of that's
in the town, but
every last bit of it was in Blandford, except for the tiny bit, the very end of the Sanderson part. But it was everything that we, on that brochure, 90% of it was in Blandford.
If you would like to see a copy of the brochure, you can go to the library and there are copies.
I can bring one up and show you on the screen.
So that you can.
I believe is that the Blandford Walks?
Yes.
Document?
Yes.
Yes, it is fabulous. I agree with Byam.
Okay. So
Mm,
yes,
there it is.
yeah, that's a
Ah,
great map. Thank
very
you.
nice.
Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Anyway, anybody who wants one, and this was done under a grant. There were all the hill towns have each hill town has one of these for their own town.
Oh, that's great.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you said that was through
That's-
Hilltown, the grant?
It was a grant. Let me see whether it says exactly who it was that came in to do it. And again, it's health related. It was you can the Hilltown Community Health Center. Who actually? It's a there's a sign saying Healthy Hampshire, Mass in Motion, and HCHC, the Hilltown Community Health Center, all part of that
Cool.
effort. But it was a sizable grant, and it actually there'll be an update on the whole thing in a couple of years.
That's great. Okay, let me ask one more question, and then I'm gonna see if Rowan and Kara wants to ask one before we shift to Shannon. I think
Sure.
one of the things that that's important too is there's an opportunity to use the questions that Alexis had sent the committee to fill out. Obviously, we're not going to get, there's a lot of questions here, and I think, you know, we're just trying to engage with the opportunity to follow up and really learn more and do a deeper dive. Since I'm also writing the land use section of this plan, I thought that there would be an opportunity to ask a land use related question, and that's specific to, are there locations in town with obvious land use conflicts? For example, areas where residential uses and open space resources abut and are in conflict. I know that in working as a consultant for the planning board, they oversee a lot of applications on solar. But I don't know if there are other parts of town where either, you know, you are finding that some development doesn't belong there, or you know that there's a certain restriction on that type of property, and you know, and if anything, if you want to share it offline, that's doable too. But is there any place in town where you know that there are obvious land use conflicts?
I can tell you that back in the 1970s, there was an attempt at trying to create a cluster housing development out on Gibbs Road, and it got fairly far along the line, and then got shut down by the local planning board. It was not something that they wanted to see happen. That was a conflict kind of situation.
Actually, that was because that land on Gibbs Road would not perk. It looked like a battlefield. There were big holes all over the place with mounds of dirt alongside them, and the water wouldn't drain for 3 or 4 days because of the subsoil. And we did.
There are all kinds of plans to make another pond, and it was a substantial pond plan that we have. We actually have the whole write-up of the plan here to anybody that's interested to see what it looked like.
And so it remains undeveloped?
This was the big farm that was there. There were 2,500 acres on Gibbs Road back at the turn of the 20th century. And it was where we had our movie studio. It's got a long, wonderful history of all kinds of things happening there. But at one point in the 1970s, there was a developer that wanted to do a major project there that would have been interesting, but it was not something that fit the needs or desires of the planning board.
But Chips didn't Hull buy most 800 acres of that?
They have just now, recently. Actually,
Yeah.
the Springfield Water was going to buy it, and then they backed out at the last minute. That the place was on the market for what was it, 3 or 4 million, and then it dropped down, and Springfield Water looked like they were going to buy it, and then I guess decided it was something they couldn't quite do, or didn't. I don't know what the problem was, but they backed out, and Hull came in and bought it.
On my road,
I would mention it.
on my road, we have on the west side of the road is almost all Springfield Water District. And
Yep.
on the east side of the road, a lot of it is Hull. And just, towards the north end, there's a piece which belongs, and I'm not sure of this, but I believe it belongs to the Department of Environmental Management, DEM. And they've put in a cabin in there. And so the irony is that you can sign up, people from all around the state can sign up to come to the cabin with their ATVs and go hunting, and yet the locals can't walk on their land on this road. It is a very odd situation.
Goodbye. Bob, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to mention, as I've mentioned several times, much of the land in Blanford is zoned agricultural. So someplace in this report, agricultural land is what keeps rural land rural. And we need to do something to try to support agriculture in town.
Thank you. Yes, that's what we're gathering. I sent the committee the survey results, and it is very clear that both in committee and in these conversations, that maintenance of some sort of rural character is what is part of Blanford's plans in the next few decades. So Rowan and Kara, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. I don't know if there was one question that you really wanted to ask before we moved on to Shannon's portion, but I also know that there will be opportunity when we have our engagement, with regards to the open space plan.
The question I've been thinking about is knowing that there's so much land that's owned by Springfield Water, there are also other kind of water districts around Russell Pond, and that's owned by a different town. Is that relationship felt differently by Blanford as the Springfield water lands are?
Bob can speak a great deal to Russell Pond.
It's not only
I only heard
land.
part of the question.
Watershed up off of Huntington Road.
Most of the land around Russell Pond, isn't that owned by the Boy Scouts?
Yes, it's not a watershed.
It's
Not
not
a watershed. It's owned by the Boy Scouts.
Oh, it's not water for a different town?
There
No.
is on Huntington Road.
Some of the old maps show it as a reservoir, but it is no longer a reservoir. It was the summer estate of Horace Moses, one of my books. At one point, water was drawn from there for the Strathmore paper mills in downtown Russell or Warnoco, but it is wholly owned by the Scouts. It's about just under 1,300 acres. It abuts the Springfield watershed property, but it is not what you would classify as public access or as a watershed.
My understanding was that it was impounded, the water was impounded for use in the Strathmore mills.
That's what I just said. Water was drawn from there by Horace Moses when he owned the property. When he sold it to the Scouts in 1945, December of 45, he kept the water rights and kept ownership of the dam. As the mills were sold in Warnoco, the ownership of the dam has changed. It's now owned by one of the discount shopping center kinds of places in West Springfield. The dam is really in question because the town of Russell doesn't want to have maintenance for it, and the scouts don't want to have maintenance for it. And somebody's going to get stuck at some point having to do that. But the property was actually dammed up back in the 1800s. There used to be a mill downstream called Hazard Mill, and it was the Hazard Pond for a while. It's gone through a number of names.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I guess, Alexis, is this the time where we had planned to switch, knowing that we have 4 o'clock?
So yeah, I think we can switch over to Shannon and her questions. And then at the end, we can, we have some questions that can kind of tie things together again in terms of how both of these elements relate to other elements within the plan. So I guess, Ken, do you feel that you have questions still that went unanswered, or because I can send this out to anybody who's interested in a format that has more space for people to write answers if they want, but we can figure that out, Ken. Yeah, so why don't we move on over to Shannon then?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to, we had come up with quite a long list of questions, so I'm going to try to jump around a bit and cover some things we hadn't covered. But first, to back up, I want to make sure that we do have a sense of all of the cultural resources, historic and cultural resources that are really important to the people of Blanford. So I know we have the White Church, obviously, and the library and the fairgrounds, Native American. There's traces of a Native American residency there. What are some other things that we're missing that really need to be in this report?
The golf club.
The golf club, okay.
Watson Park.
Ski area.
Okay. And obviously, I think also even just some of the landscapes and scenic vistas, because they thankfully are still the way they were, when Blanford started to become a town. So I think that's really important and seems to be a priority for people to maintain, which is great. Just a general question, does anyone have a response to what Blanford is doing well right now in terms of its historic and cultural resources? Anything you want to highlight?
We're doing a good job with the White Church, certainly, and the Historical Society in holding a very good notch on our own history. And the library has a tremendous asset in historical items and genealogical research that's available, as well as what's available at the Historical Society.
I'm not sure this, certainly Nicole could speak to it, but I believe we're the only library in the Hill Towns that is a member of CW Mars. That means that we had to barcode every single item in the library so that it could go out on interlibrary loan, which means our members have access to 9 million items in libraries across the state. We also provide a lot of high-speed internet access, so people come either to the library or they park their cars in the parking lot or sit on the benches if the weather's nice outside the building to get access to high-speed internet, which is not hugely common in this town.
Right, that's a really good point. I know I spoke about this a bit with Nicole and Mary, learning about your wonderful library. There's some suggestions for emergency preparedness too, to begin to look at libraries as places that when there's an emergency, they would be the go-to place. And there was a tornado in the Cape a few years ago, I think, and that library had really worked to get a generator and things just to be ready. And then when everything lost power, or like you said, just now to go there for internet access, it's a resource. But I didn't know that about the CW Mars, so thank you. Speaking of tornadoes, and I've spoken about this a bit also with Nicole and Mary and Chips with things that are irreplaceable, but can you think of Blandford resources to make sure I don't leave them out, like town or nonprofit or private archival collections that would benefit from proactively planning for a natural disaster like a tornado? Because that's something that I think would really fit in this plan. I know the library has a collection.
We have the only existing complete collection of the Country Journal, which dates back to the 1970s and is currently on microfilm. And the last few years we have that are in print. And we're looking for grant funding to have that digitized so that in the case of any sort of natural disaster, that unique and valuable resource would be preserved and still accessible. And then it would also make it accessible and usable for us to have right now as well. Did that come through?
It did. It did. I think when you turned off your video, it came a little more, but I understood what you're saying. The only complete collection of the Country Journal from the 1970s, microfilm, and you're looking for grant funding to digitize.
At the Historical Society, we have two file cabinets that are heavy duty, fire resistant, where we put our most precious documents or whatever. And there's that. And then as we get more and more involved with being better at higher and higher tech, we're going to be doing a lot more digitizing and storing things in the cloud and off-site as well.
Under cultural events, we should mention the summer concert series, the White Church Summer Concert Series.
Right. The fact is that the White Church is available for use by the general public. It can be rented for any kind of meeting or whatever, meetings or funerals or weddings or the like. It's all very much available. And the other fascinating thing is that it's the site for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years now, for the Mennonites to gather to have a major concert prior to a 10-day their annual West Coast or East Coast bus tour. And they're Mennonites that come from all over the United States and actually all over the Western Hemisphere. They gather for this event that has been happening the day the couple of days after Labor Day, that usually the Thursday or Friday after Labor Day, and then they have a concert that's open to the public, and a lot of people have enjoyed watching them get underway. It's really quite fascinating.
That's great. Thank you.
Within the White Church, to be preserved, if you're talking about preserving things, is an, I think, 1893 Chips, Henry Miller grand piano that has been completely restored.
Yeah, it's been restored now probably 4 or 5 times in varying degrees, and it's a project that we have enough funds to make it an ongoing process and years to come. We have a investment fund that's designed to just make sure that the White Church is continued to be worked upon and kept in good shape.
But as an item, it's somewhat irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the building and its contents. So related to that, is there currently a fire plan or an emergency plan for the White Church? in the event of, we will hope this never occurs, but in the event of an emergency. I think that's something that sometimes these resilient master plans suggest, even just what are the steps if this happens or that happens, who's the team that gets involved, what needs to be considered to be safe first. Is there anything that anyone has had a chance to prepare? Is that something that would be useful to be part of this consideration?
All right, it's certainly something done with it, with the connection of the fire department. I'm not sure what kind of a plan you're looking toward, but
For example, that library I referenced in the Cape, they kind of had an emergency plan, and when the emergency unfortunately struck, because they had their roles, they knew what to do. Everybody knew where to go or what they were in charge of, or so I just thought that was an interesting idea. I know in my own house, we should have a kind of a stop, drop, and roll emergency plan, but we don't. So I think it's not something we want to think about, but it might be, that's just something to ask if it would be worth these really irreplaceable buildings and contents, if it would be useful to try to talk about the steps, best practices to develop those types of plans. Let's see. Talking about all these different wonderful groups and committees and commissions in your town, can you think of ways that some of these, the Historical Commission, the Historical Society, the Blanford Cultural Commission, the Conservation Commission, could work together on programming or goals in a way that would benefit the town and residents and visitors? Has anything like that been broached or discussed? Partnerships?
you say between conservation and what?
Any of the groups that are working towards programming or rec or
We have a
preservation.
major kind of working together on this 2022 celebration of the
Okay.
100th
Of the
anniversary.
White Church anniversary.
And that'll include everybody in town, a different, the Board of Selectmen are aware of that, even getting started now, and the library and every part of the town that has anything that they could think outside the box and make it as big and wonderful a celebration as we can make it. That's our goal, and it probably will be at least a couple of day event. Maybe 3 years ago, we had a major back to Blanford reunion for the Harts and Wyman family, and over 250 people came from all over the United States with roots to Blanford to celebrate, and that's going to happen as part of this whole thing again.
Okay.
In 2022, and we hope to expand it to other family groups and get other connections that might be. Back in the early days, the end of the 19th century and up through 1970, there were what was called back to Blanford days, particularly the North Blanford families would for quite a while it was every year, and then it became every few years, and toward the end it was like every 10 years. And it hasn't happened since 1970. But
oh wow,
that kind of thing is terrific.
One of the priorities of the Cultural Council is to work with the existing cultural providers in town to funnel state Massachusetts Cultural Council funds to projects happening in the town. So we have funded things at the library, at the school, and certainly have been working closely with CHIPS over the last 3 years or so to promote and fund, underwrite the summer concert series.
We're very appreciative.
So in terms of partnerships, yes, they certainly exist. In a town of 1,200 people, you have a handful of people, many of whom are on this call, who are the same people who are on the cultural council or on the library, trustees, or at the historical society. There's a number, since all these things are volunteer organizations, you're basically getting people who have some civic spirit, who are trying to do as much as they can with limited budgets at their disposal. So yes, there is partnerships are something we're always looking at, always. You have to. There's not enough manpower to go around if you don't partner with other organizations.
Am I coming
That's
through?
great.
Can you hear me now that my computer's screen is off?
Yep, I can. There's a little bit of a lag, but I can hear you.
Okay, so I would like to echo something that Chips and Bayam have just kind of hinted at here, which is that I think that the problem that we have in our town is not so much that there isn't collaboration and that there aren't people that are working together, but the fact that it's the same people that are working on all of these things. And I think that in order for us to continue to have a vibrant community, we need to find a way to recruit more people to be participating in the actual running of these things.
And to that end, we need to reinvigorate our welcome wagon type thing activities that we had for a few years. We had a really good one, but it sort of petered out with changing of personnel or whatever. And
When was the last time that you had a welcome wagon type? So for new residents moving in, there would be
4 years at least.
Oh, that's not that long ago.
Yeah, that was a short term kind of experience and something that's very good. But we need to somehow institutionalize it. Perhaps even get somebody that's a paid employee to have that as an adjunct part of their job or whatever, and then get volunteers to
I've
help.
been in town 40 years. I'm still waiting to get welcomed.
Well, we try to welcome people on Birch Hill. We have our own little community there.
John Piper here. Being on the fire department, Dan Daniels said it best, I thought. He said, are we a community or just a bunch of houses in the woods? And he said, I'd like to think we are a community. This is back when they were trying to put in the water filtration system at a town meeting. Anyway, it's been my experience that most people in town just want to be a bunch of houses in the woods. Whenever we go on a fire call, anybody new in town, almost half the fire department doesn't live in town. People just don't want to get involved. They just want to be a bunch of houses in the woods. That's why it's always the same people on so many different committees, because they're the only ones that really care. The other people literally just don't care. They just want to be houses in the woods.
John, unfortunately, that is true for any town or city.
Yeah, I was going to say I live in Springfield and a little bit bigger, but same problems. But luckily you have a very good core. Luckily for Blanford, you have a core group of people who are very engaged. So much now I'm writing in so many places, I'm losing my questions.
Yeah, me too.
So can I ask, just to throw this out there, what would you consider the biggest threat to Blanford's cultural and historic resources? Threat or threats?
The internet.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it's very hard to get people out of their houses anymore to actually do things. I mean, going back, to the question we were just talking about, for many years I was the artistic director of a professional theater company in Chester. And I work in, theater and performance venues around the country. And we all have the same problem. It's getting people out of their houses and getting them involved. And it's really hard to do when such huge amounts of product come over the transom of their houses for very little money when you think about it. So they can see millions of different movies with streaming, services. They can surf the net. They can play games. They can watch television. They can do all of these things. And it's very, very difficult. You sort of get this bunker mentality where I'm in my bunker and all the outside world pours into my bunker electronically, and I don't have to interface with anybody because you know what? People are difficult.
And the COVID situation
I
has
don't want to see them.
the COVID situation is up the bunker game
Totally.
big time.
Well, I hope that it will make people
Funding is
sick
always an
of their
issue.
bunker. Funding, yes. Funding. And I've heard Chip say that, and I know Nicole has reached out and gotten some grants. What are some ways that you've found funding for some of these projects when that obviously is always a challenge? Besides the wonderful Blanford Cultural Council.
I have found, my experience is that the money's much easier to come by than the manpower. And I think you see articles about this all the time, particularly in the area of fire departments, volunteer fire departments around the country, that young people are not volunteering. Young people are not becoming involved in their communities as ambulance, or fire or anything like that. It's the idea of service to the community, which seemed to be so much a part of what we grew up with in terms of values, doesn't seem to be promulgated in the same way today. Money is there. There's so much grant money out there available. If you have the wherewithal to do some research and to write grants, you will get money. That's not the problem, in my experience.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? How are we for time, Alexis?
Oh, we have about 20 minutes left. I mean, Shannon, you had some great questions about kind of the older architecture in town. I want to make sure you have time to ask some of those as well. And then if we have time at the end, I can come back to some other questions.
Sure, okay. Well, I'll go back to this one. So would you view Blandford's older architecture and older housing infrastructure as a link to the past and benefit for the future, or as a challenge to progress?
John Piper again. There's only a couple old buildings, and that's the church, the library, general store's pretty old, Shepherd Farm, which pretty much needs to be torn down at this point. There's no historic significance, I don't believe, to any of the older houses. Mary Cronholm's house is pretty old, but they do a good job at keeping it up. There's not a ton of old buildings in Blanford. It's not like, Salem or, some places in Boston where they got these couple 100-year-old buildings. We don't have much of that. And the few good ones that we have, we're keeping up. We're keeping them going.
So related to that, and even going back to buildings that are, from 1950 and younger, would it be helpful to have guidance on design guidelines and best practices for maintaining older homes? Is that something that would be useful?
Then you got people telling you what to do with your house.
Well, that's
You
not
want
the
to put in
same as like a local historic district where there's an ordinance. But design guidelines are more kind of best practices, and even along the lines of with heavier rainfalls, ways to make sure that you have proper gutter systems, things like that.
Right. That sounds like it's pretty much common sense. more than anything. No?
I
Sometimes.
certainly wouldn't want anybody telling me I have to put gutters on my house.
Mhm.
Or I have to fix them, or it's my house, it's my business.
Okay, noted.
I think
And a
your
lot of
vote is
people
just
don't have any money.
in town. Am I
I don't want to
understanding
be
this correctly,
critical.
Shannon?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't want to be critical, but what I think would be most helpful for the professionals who are putting this together is if they were to visit the town
Mhm,
and make a little tour.
mhm.
Good point.
Yes. That's my plan. I was just waiting for a little less white stuff on the ground.
And we had about 20 landscape architects march through the town about 2 weeks ago, looking at our town common to try to come up with ideas as to how better to arrange our town common area. And it was very helpful to have them, as they were from all over, actually all over New England. It's quite an interesting group.
It does sound good. Sometimes it's good to get different ideas.
But they came to see what we had. I
Mhm.
think that's important.
Come tell us what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, has Wildscape been to tour the town? Other than look at maps?
We have not yet. I am pretty familiar with Blandford. I grew up in Williamsburg and used to ski at the mountain in my youths. Went to Westfield State University and go hiking up around in there in my younger days. But yeah, looking forward to getting out there when we get the chance, for sure.
Okay.
John Piper again. So it almost seems like you're trying to make this town something it's not. All the center of town has got houses on it. It's not like Martha's Vineyard where you're going to get people to come and walk the town and spend the night and do things and go out to dinner. This is a bedroom community. It's never going to be like Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, we're not a destination, that's for sure. Not anymore, not without the ski area.
Well,
And even then,
more to the point, we're not Great Barrington or Lenox. I mean, you don't have to go all the way out to the Cape somewhere to, there are places where people, there's greater population density, there's more money, there's more culture available, so we are on the border of the biggest cultural vacation destination in America.
Yes, yes.
So there's a tremendous drain. That sucking sound you hear is all of the people who are interested in culture in, the next town over. It's where that energy is taking place. We are a much more rural, much more sparsely populated community that doesn't have those sorts of things to offer. And I don't know that, with so much already there and established, you got 100-year-old theater companies and the Boston Symphony Orchestra and the oldest summer dance program in America at Jacob's Pillow. These places are hugely successful and funded and established. And we're not going to compete with that. It would be misguided to try and compete with it since it's 10 miles away. We have to look at other things that we have to offer, which I think most of us feel is the outdoor life here.
Mhm. And I think part of the visioning and the focus groups is that not that we're trying to make Blanford into something it's not. We're trying to make Blanford into what you all want Blanford to be and what Blanford is, the best of what you could be. So I hope that is coming across.
Right. And
John
part of,
Piper again.
Yeah.
Most of what I'm hearing is what you just said is what Blanford is what the people here are attracted to. They're, unfortunately, they do want to be some houses in the woods with a little bit of community, but we don't want, I guess I'm speaking for myself here. I don't want to draw a ton of people to this town. I don't want large commercial traffic. I don't want people coming walking around. It's not that bothers me to take a walk, but no one's going to come here to take a walk. The infrastructure, as far as the reason to come here, isn't here, and it's not going to come here. Most of the land is unbuildable. I don't know how many, like the other gentleman was just saying about Jacob's Pillow and Great Barrington, Northampton. That's never going to happen here. And I don't think most people who live here want it to happen. If I want to go to those places, they're right down the road.
So I'm actually glad to hear this feedback, because it's making me feel like for our next, we have other focus groups we're conducting, that perhaps I need to do a better job introducing the purpose, which is to learn exactly from you what it is that you want. Because, you know, in crafting a master plan, outside consultants, you know, who, you know, don't know your community, and it feels impersonal. The whole idea of coming to these smaller groups with questions directed at people who have experience with these topics in the community is precisely because, you know, we want to learn about Blanford and what you love about it. And we're very grateful that you are volunteering your time to tell us these things, because, you know, I understand it's, from what it sounds like, there's this core group in the community that really loves Blanford and volunteers so much of their time to preserve the things that people love about it. And we absolutely want to honor that in this plan. And I think, you know, just in hearing these conversations, we've come up with this draft vision statement, and, you know, with the clear understanding that it was going to need to be revised after these focus groups, because one visioning session is not enough at all to get a sense really of what a community wants and needs. So I certainly on the next focus groups will make an effort to make that very clear, but it's not trying to, you know, deliver any recommendations through this meeting at all. Just want to hear from all of you.
One of the things that we haven't really discussed much is the ongoing necessity of the fair to sort of reinvent itself and keep working at it. And I for one, am very hopeful that there's some new young blood along the line that maybe are going to help it reinvent itself, as it obviously is no longer really an agricultural fair, and it doesn't want to become an Eastern States. You know, but there's still people that love to come on Labor Day weekend and enjoy the small town fair feel to it. And how that can be supported, I think is important to recognize. It's over 150 years old, and talking about history. And Linda is the person who ought to be speaking to this more than anything, because she's been deeply involved.
Didn't know that. That was actually one of my questions. Thank you, Chips, about the fair and how you envision the future of the fair in Blanford. I didn't know that Linda was a good resource for that.
She is a big resource. She's a member of the fair committee and been there, knows it inside out from being a child.
Yes, sir. I know that they are going to try to do like a mini spring fair and incorporate some single events into one event, which might be a little boost for it as well. So we normally have a flea market, but they're also talking about having a horse show in conjunction with that, and touch a truck. We did each of those events separately, And they were nicely attended, but we think if we get the 3 events together, it might be greater attendance. So.
Okay. And you said that's a flea market, a touch a truck,
And a
what's
horse
touch
show.
a truck, and a horse show.
Yeah.
What's touch a truck?
It's when they bring like big industrial trucks or fire trucks, and kids can go up and touch them and sit on them and, you know, turn the siren on and that kind of
Oh,
fun
cool.
stuff.
I think as kind of some last questions as we close out, Shannon and Ken, is there any last thing you would want to ask before I ask a couple of closing questions?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay, awesome. How about you, Ken?
I guess maybe no, I think I'm good. I think, there's going to be the opportunity when we engage in the open space plan, because as I mentioned, this is a lot of the stuff that's going to be in the open space and recreation plan are the same elements that are going to be in the master plan chapter and open space and natural resources. So I think as we continue to have these focus groups, and Alexis will be part of them and I will be part of them, I'll be able to also kind of generalize and think about the threads of connection. I know that Alexis probably will be asking a question in these last few minutes about how it connects to other items.
Why, yes.
So why don't you go ahead, Alexis? Thank you.
Sure. So in a master plan, for those of you who participated in any of we have quite a few committee members here. If you attended the visioning session, one of the things that came up was a discussion of what is typically in a master plan, the various elements that it crosses. And so a master plan will address topics like transportation, public facilities and services, housing. One in particular that I think really connects to these two topics is economic development. And land use, sustainability. So just kind of out of curiosity, where do you think these particular elements, that is Blandford's open space resources, natural resources, historic resources, how do these things tie into some of the other bigger elements or connected elements within a master plan? Where does it thematically connect?
Well, I think we're trying to walk a fairly fine line because, as I said before, we are surrounded. We've got 5 colleges to our east. We've got, Berkshire County's cultural attractions to the west. And so, we don't want to be competing with people who are more established than we are to provide those services. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we don't want to be a cultural wasteland. Mm-hmm. We Cultural Council funds a lot of programming in our school so that our kids are going up to Mass MoCA. Our kids are having concerts where they learn about classical music. I mean, where our library is a center for lifelong learning. So this is the narrow trail and the historical life of this town, which is around us, whether it's Watson Park or the White Church or whatever. The history means a lot to the people in this town. So we're trying to walk a fine line mm-hmm. where we can make those services accessible to people without kidding ourselves about we are not going to be the next Lenox or Stockbridge. It's just not going to happen. And I don't think people want it to happen.
Right. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
I would agree with that, whatever that's worth.
Okay. No, this is very, very helpful to hear because, for those of you who attended the visioning session, which I think was quite a few of you, it was, it's first of all, a lot of talking to make sure people understand what a master plan is. And then so there's the educational piece, but then it's focusing more on general things. So the purpose of these focus groups, we have this one today. We have a transportation and public facilities one tomorrow, and then housing and economic development and sustainability on Thursday. So if you want to come to any of those and you didn't receive, I kind of sent invites based on suggestions from the committee. But if any of those sound interesting to you and you'd like me to send you the Zoom link, I would be happy to. Don't be surprised if some of the questions are the same because we will have new people in front of us. But you know, we would love to keep learning more about your community and hearing from you those at those opportunities.
Question before we go.
Of course.
I heard Shannon say something about preparedness for a fire, and you know, what have we done at the White Church? Are we in this whole plan? Are we doing some disaster preparedness for the whole town? You know, like heat stations. If we have a freeze like we have, and if electricity goes out, where do people go in the summer when it's super hot? Where can they go for a cooling station? Those kinds of things. Are we looking at that in our master plan?
That's something that I was planning to address related to cultural resources. I've been working off and on with CoStep Massachusetts, and they work a lot specifically with libraries, and I know Nicole is familiar with them, but I think that it would be useful just to have that brought forth in this plan, and just to really think about those things that are irreplaceable and really locally significant, and you know, just planning ahead in the hopeful never to happen event of an emergency.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we had a tornado come through here and wipe out half of our town,
yeah,
where would the people go? You know, I mean, is that part of our plan?
I think to add, so, you know, Shannon is obviously looking at the cultural resources with CoStep and the state wanting to understand how rich culture is in Massachusetts. But with regards to some of the other aspects, you know, as you mentioned, Linda, you know, if a tornado or some sort of natural disaster were to happen, the town does have a hazard mitigation plan, which would identify, you know, some of those facilities, some of those dams and infrastructure that, you know, may be needing to be addressed in, you know, in the next couple of years, identifying funding sources for addressing those facilities. So it does exist. It's updated every 5 years. I think the last one was in 2016. So probably dusting that off, and if anything, identifying, you know, if there's some gaps in there, you know, to identify, you know, how we can improve that.
That's a great question, actually. Thank you for asking. So with that said, what I'll do after this, I'll send a follow-up email, and I will include the questions again if there's any that you realize, you know, I have other ideas I want to share. You can certainly email me or email Ken or Shannon at PVPC. And I will also give you the opportunity, if you want to let me know if there's other of those focus groups that I mentioned that you think, you know, you'd love to contribute to, or if you can think of someone else, you know, especially I will say the sustainability one right now, the invite list is looking pretty slim. So certainly if you can continue to think about who we can best speak to learn more about your community and the things to include in this plan, you can let me know in response to that email that I'll send out. Okay. So thank you so much for giving us an hour and a half of your time. I really appreciate it. And we will be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everyone. Good night.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that my audio is so awful.
Oh, that's okay, Nicole. I just saved the chat because I saw that you had some really great comments in it. So the chat is saved, and I will send you those questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thanks. Bye.
How we keep this all going.
Thank you.